are here on our campus that we sometimes take for granted and we don't pay much attention to. And so bear with me as we bring on our guests. First, we have Aaron Wheel, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly, but he'll share that with me when he comes back on. Is the ed and the ED and CEO of Central Florida Hillel at UCF, and is currently in his 18th year with Hillel. He has a master's degree in Jewish nonprofit management, and he resides with his wife Sharon in Winter Park. They have 3 children who are all living in Israel and studying in university there. That's going to be a great conversation to talk about, having children there, being empty nesters while your children are in another country. And Adam Bursad is the director of Jewish student life at Central Florida Hillel. He moved to Orlando from New Jersey in 2018 after graduating from Temple University in Philadelphia. You can generally find Adam in the kitchen perfecting new recipes or watching his beloved Philadelphia sport teams play. And we're going to have something to talk about there too, because I don't know about football when it comes to that, because I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. And while this is not a great year for us, I don't know how great of a year it is for you all either. So how are you all doing? How's everything? And did I get your names pronounced correctly? First of all, I don't want to mispronounce those.
It's Weil.
Weil.
You got it. Everything else is perfect.
All right.
You're good for me.
Excellent. Excellent. So gentlemen, thank you for being a part of the podcast today. I just, one of the things that we were thinking about as we were going through the year is just trying to pay attention to what was happening over the course of time. And of course, today being the 6th day of Hanukkah, it was really important to kind of bring in that aspect of it. But we don't want to just stick on Hanukkah. We want to be able to also expand and kind of share what you all are doing in your neighborhood and how we at UCF should be aware of just what's happening, what's going on, especially as it relates to Hillel. So Aaron, why don't you tell me a little bit about you and that wonderful chair you're sitting in?
Well, thank you, Dr. Butler. Well, the chair actually is what happens when you empty nest and your children head off to college and something's too big to go to college.
Yes.
Mom and dad
in another country. So you didn't tell me that was in another country.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So all of our children live in Israel and go to university in Israel. They graduated Winter Park High School and Lake Mary Prep. And within a week, they were on a plane to Israel, and 2 daughters at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and a son at Bar Ilan University just outside of Tel Aviv.
Just out of an aside, how did that come up? How did that even kind of transpire that they would even want to go there for their studies?
Excellent question. So my family's been in the United States since, I don't know, the 1800s. And in 1993, I got married. And my wife and I decided that we wanted to go try and live in Israel and see what that would be like. So we moved to Israel, and all of our children were born there. And about 2003, we decided to leave, came back to the States. I was the Hillel director in Pittsburgh for 10 years before coming down to UCF. Nice. And, we lived in a neighborhood in Pittsburgh that now everybody, unfortunately, is kind of familiar with, called Squirrel Hill. Which tragically is where the Tree of Life Synagogue is, and that's where the 11 people were murdered in the synagogue that morning.
Right.
Moving from Squirrel Hill to Orlando was a real kind of a shift for our kids. And I think when they graduated high school, they wanted to be more in a community that was kind of familiar to what they had when they were living in Israel. You know, we'd always gone back in the summers; they'd had that opportunity.
Right.
And, we'll see where the future holds, but for right now, they're getting a terrific educational opportunity.
Excellent. And just as an aside, how does that transfer back? I know that my wife is from Dominica and her brother studied in a foreign country. And I know that sometimes, and he's a medical doctor, and so there are these things that happen where United States kind of accepts or not accepts some of the credentials that a person has. If they decide to come back to the U.S., will there be issues with regards to that, or is there some type of a flow where it's not so much a problem?
So Israel's fortunate in that it has 7 main universities, and each of those is ranked among the top universities in the world. So Hebrew University is in the top 100 globally of universities, which is pretty, just by comparison, to give you an idea, UCF, we're in the top 400 globally, according to the Shanghai Index. So Hebrew University around 100. Bar Ilan probably in the, say, the 300 to 400 rank, similar to where UCF is. Mm-hmm. So when you're at that level of productivity, then those universities are going to be more familiar to those who are in the know here in the States. Nice. And it depends where you are. If you're in a major urban center, it's going to be more familiar than if you were in the middle of nowhere. But generally speaking, Israeli degrees transfer well to the American higher education system.
Excellent. So let me bring Adam in here, and I'm going to start off with you with talking a little bit about what Hanukkah means. And I know that it means different things for different aspects of the Jewish faith, different areas within there. And it being the sixth day, there's only a certain number of time left before it ends for this year's cycle, so to speak. Is there anything special about the sixth day that we should know about?
Nothing specific. Each day is pretty similar, but Hanukkah is an 8-day holiday, and as per general Jewish holidays, they start at sundown. So today is the 6th day. Tonight would be the 7th night, going into tomorrow being the 7th day, and then tomorrow being the 8th night, which would be the last night we light candles. But Hanukkah as a whole, it's the story of the miracle of the oil. The Jews basically won back their temple, which was basically destroyed. They were able to reconquer it, and the whole story goes that there was not enough oil to light up the area so you could see and everything, and the oil that they had left ended up lasting for 8 days, which is kind of where we take that tradition from. Right. So oil is and lights as a whole are very big within this holiday as a whole, whether we cook food in oil, and just kind of the idea of the Festival of Lights. Obviously, lights you can take into contextual, saying actual lights and brighten up, but also physically being a light, in this world, and having happy and joyful times and things like that.
So you said something about lighting up the candles, and typically it's on the last day that you light the candles?
You actually light candles each night. So each night. So you have what's called a Chanukiah. I have one right next to me. So this is what it looks like. You can basically get them in any which way. So it has 8 regular candles or holders, and then this one middle one, which is called the shamish. It basically lights every other candle. So you light this one in the middle, and then you take this one and light every candle. So on the first night, you'll light the middle one and 1. The second night, you'll light the middle one and 2, and so forth.
And they remain burning until the end of the 8 days?
No, so they're regular candles. Obviously, you can have different kind of candles. Some traditional ones, people who light them actually use oil-based candles, which will actually light a little bit longer. But they usually will go out after a little bit, and then you'll relight them again the next night.
Okay, so after they go out for the day, then you relight them. So it's not like an ongoing tradition.
Yeah, you basically did the same. You say a little prayer, sing a few songs, and do the same process. And it's also custom in a lot of places to have your Chanukiah or menorah on a windowsill, so people can see it outside. And again, kind of sharing that light.
Is there a particular order in which you do the lighting of them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you refill the candles right to left, but you light them left to right.
Oh, excellent. See, something that I did not know at all in terms of that. So when you think about Hanukkah, what are like some of the highlights of this experience for people, and like what do children learn, and as an aspect of it all, and what are those traditions that people kind of follow through on? I know there's probably many different ways that people celebrate it, but what are some of the most common ones?
Yeah, so obviously Hanukkah as a whole has been very, I guess, commercialized in America, especially. So it's definitely celebrated a little bit different, say, here than it would be other places in the world. I mean, we've been kind of put into this society, right, where Christmas at this time of year is the main holiday, and a lot of what happens, say with presents, for example, a lot of people associate Hanukkah and presents. That's really because of Christmas. It wasn't necessarily ever a thing besides that. While it is tradition, the other tradition to get on Hanukkah, this is kind of more of an ancient thing, is to get money from people. And if you've ever seen Hanukkah gel, it's like chocolate coins. That kind of stems from this idea of giving the children money. Back then it started as giving it to your teachers, and then it kind of became a traditional thing. So like in Israel, for example, it's more common, say, to get money than a present. Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've been told multiple times.
More chocolate.
More chocolate. So yeah, so that, which is interesting, I learned that the chocolate did not start until the like 1920s.
Right.
Which is more of a, I guess they could say that's a modern thing. They just, figured they could mass produce something that looked like money and make it, enjoyable for kids.
Oh.
And then also with food as a whole, there's lots of traditional foods, which I'm also happy to get into if you would like, that we eat on Hanukkah.
Well, I had heard at one point, maybe I'm thinking maybe I'm thinking Kwanzaa, but also that there was gifts of book giving. Is there something along that lines, or is that more, maybe I'm thinking along the lines of Kwanzaa?
Well, I mean, Adam, if you think differently, let me know. But because Hanukkah is not a holiday for gift giving traditionally in the Jewish tradition, again, in America, it's a little bit different because also unique. We talk about, Dr. Butler, when you began about talking about faith, the notion of Judaism as a faith is largely an American construct. If you go to Canada, if you go to the Philadelphia International Airport and you look at the arrivals hall, it has all the different peoples that have come through the airport, and it has like Brazil and Russia and China and Peru and Nigeria and Jews, and it goes on and on and on. But Jews are listed as a people, much as like if you go to the former Soviet Union on your identity card. If you're Jewish, it doesn't say Ukrainian, it says Jewish under your Ukrainian ID, because Jewish is its own nationality. We're a people. We're a people that have a faith, but we're our own ethnic identity. We cross color, we cross gender, sexual orientations. It's like some Jews may look white, but they can't be white, right? Jews by definition don't fit into a color group. Same thing also, by the way, with Hanukkah traditions. So as Adam pointed out, the notion of celebrating Hanukkah got very overpowered by Christmas just by having the good fortune of being coming on the calendar so close to Christmas every year. So frankly, the Jewish kids looked next door and you saw this, and Christmas is a marvelous holiday. I mean, it's hard to compete with Christmas. I mean, you got Santa Claus, you got the candy canes, you've got the eggnog, the spiked eggnog, right? You've got lots of things to like about Christmas. The families together, the songs, there's so many wonderful songs. And so then you've got Hanukkah, and like, okay, you've got this candelabra you're going to light each night, and we'll spin the dreidel, and there's some chocolate candy you can have. Like it's a tough sell. So over time, American parents added presents. Adam Sandler kicked in a decent Hanukkah song, and those traditions have been added on. But if you go to other countries around the world, Hanukkah is a relatively minor holiday, except I think in Israel, which Israel is very much like the United States as a country. And so the Jewish community there borrows a lot from what they see happening in the United States. So Hanukkah has, in the last 20 years, I think, started to take on a greater role in Israel than it ever did.
And not necessarily religiously, but culturally.
Okay, culturally. And I had heard at one point that there was always this friction between the Hanukkah holiday and, or not a holiday, but the tradition behind it, and also Christmas. Was there friction, or do you think that there has been concern about the celebration of Christmas? What you would hear is like, Jewish individuals will be upset to hear about Christmas all the time. So you have to be open to, making sure that you include that as well in happy holidays and all those other things.
So, Dr. Butler, there's multiple opinions on that. And the old joke is, ask two Jews and you'll get four opinions. So I'll give one opinion and I'm going to leave another one, and I'm sure Adam will pick right up on it. But one opinion is that we should be saying Merry Christmas, and we should say Happy Hanukkah, and we should say Happy Kwanzaa, because each of those communities self-identifies and decides what their holiday is. To blend it into a kind of a pastiche of happy holidays kind of forces each holiday celebration to try and fit into this polyglot. And then in doing so, we kind of miss some of the uniqueness that Kwanzaa and Christmas and Hanukkah have. So my personal choice is that if I'm speaking to someone who celebrates Kwanzaa, I'm saying Happy Kwanzaa. And if I'm speaking to someone who celebrates Christmas, I'm saying Merry Christmas. And if I mean Happy Hanukkah, and I'm speaking to someone Jewish, I'm going to say Happy Hanukkah, because I think that each group should be able to embrace without having to kind of blend into this melting pot. Now, that's one opinion. Adam, is there a different opinion on that?
I totally agree with you on that front, and also just kind of add a different, I guess, question to this too, right? As I mentioned before, Hanukkah is not Christmas. It's not a major holiday within the Jewish religion, and I think that sometimes, and again, maybe Dr. Butler, this is kind of what you're thinking, is that we feel left out, or we feel that people kind of view us in a different way because we're not necessarily celebrating, or they think Hanukkah is just the Jewish Christmas, and it's not. So there's this idea that, and especially in modern day America, that it is. And again, I think Christmas is amazing. And I think the celebration and this time of year is fantastic. I love the winter season. I'm actually in New Jersey right now, and it's snowing behind me. But there is this notion that Hanukkah is Jewish Christmas, and it's not. So we have to kind of differentiate. I think that's one thing that people should know.
This is thought that it's offensive to kind of say that Merry Christmas or whatever, because
sure,
you take it that way. And so, is that different for Orthodox Jews as opposed to non-Orthodox?
I think honestly, it really depends on the community you live in.
Okay.
The people you know. Because I think it depends. If you live in a neighborhood that is very diverse, you're gonna probably understand everyone's holidays and understand it. Some people live in certain areas where some things are more predominantly celebrated than not. Certain maybe Jewish neighborhoods. It's actually a really funny thing I've seen. There was a good Jewish family in Israel, I think, and it's obviously predominantly a Jewish country. And for Purim, which is a Jewish holiday usually takes place in March. It's a whole other story, but you dress up, and they all dressed up as Santa Claus, but they had no idea who that was. So that was a very just funny anecdote that it happened to be at a holiday store, and they just picked that outfit out.
But to that note, though, very similar. You'd be surprised, Dr. Butler, how many of the Christmas food that you eat in the grocery store that actually has a little symbol on the back of it that says OU, and the OU stands for Orthodox Union, and it's a symbol that the Orthodox Jewish community has its own kind of a marketing brand, and that they've gone to that factory and certified that food is kosher. Now, you'd ask yourself, why does the Jewish community care about having kosher certification for food that Christians are eating?
Right.
Good answer. Because what happens is after Christmas, all those products that you can't sell for Christmas, Israelis buy it up like crazy because it's now on discount. It's already kosher, so you can sell it in Israel. So Israeli kids, after Christmas, see in the grocery store old men in a white beard chocolates. Now, they don't know about it as Santa Claus per se, but they know the old man with the chocolate, it's affordable, and I want to get that. And that's good chocolate, right? Just kind of like the Easter Bunny. Go look for Easter bunnies. Easter bunnies get sold afterwards. Or in Halloween in the United States, at the end of Halloween, all those costumes get shipped to Israel and resold in March for Purim. So there's a lot of somebody in the business world got involved and said, wait a minute, how can we do this in a smarter way?
How do we do this and capitalize?
Right.
Also, one thing on that note too, I know, not personally, but I've seen this a lot of times where the mall Santas happen to be religious Jews. Yes, they look the part and they're not working, so they can just, they're not working on the holiday. It's not a holiday for them, so they can kind of do it and give it back to the community that way, which is kind of cool.
In fact, you're starting to see now Santa Clauses in Israel in the malls, which is really kind of a strange phenomenon. Israel really looks up to the United States in a big way. They're both immigrant countries. They're both polyglot countries with over 75 spoken languages in both countries. So there's a lot of similarities between the two.
Wow.
And as American popular culture kind of, goes into that society, as Adam said, it's a predominantly Jewish country, just like America is a predominantly a Christian country.
Right.
But it's more easy when you're in a minority to see what's going on in the majority culture than it is for the majority culture to see the minority culture. So both
Okay.
Adam and I have had many people come up to us and like, oh, so you guys are Jewish. Does that mean you do something different that, like, after you light your Christmas tree, do you do your menorah? We're like, no, we actually don't have the tree. And like, well, how is it Hanukkah if you don't have a tree? Because the mindset is this is what we do in the majority. It's hard to get into the mindset of the minority. Israel has the flip problem.
Right. So some people see Christmas as a Christian holiday, and then of course there's those who see it as just it's just Christmas, right?
Sure.
Have you ever celebrated, or do you think about celebrating, or I don't know, is it a taboo to celebrate it, or how does Christmas kind of materialize itself in the Jewish culture?
Well, I can go first, Aaron, unless you want. Okay, sure. So growing up, my neighborhood's very diverse. So we would go to a neighbor's house to decorate their tree and things like that. That's to kind of the extent of what my Christmas has been. They would come over for Passover, Seder, and so forth. So it's a lot of sharing culture and things like that. Nothing necessarily in my house. Love the lights though. Every winter growing up, I'd go to my grandparents in Palm Beach and drive through those neighborhoods that have the entire neighborhood decorated with Christmas stuff. So the entire of the year I always found amazing, but there's nothing that I'm personally celebrating. And then there's obviously, Christmas Day. This is actually a kind of a fun thing. There's this generic idea that all Jews, go to the movie and eat Chinese food. And
Christmas Day.
Yeah, and it's really funny. The origin of this story was that when Jews immigrated to America, on Christmas, the only other people who weren't celebrating were the Chinese. So their their restaurants were still open. So that's the only food Jewish people could eat. So now it became this thing, but I learned this a few years ago that there was an actual reason behind it becoming a thing. Okay. So that's kind of like everyone does that. It's like they're running a joke that, oh, what do you get? Chinese food. It's always the thing.
Excellent. See,
that's everywhere you go. It doesn't matter where. It's just somehow somebody wrote it down. I don't think anybody wrote it down, but it's just, you can go to Seattle, Miami. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Tuscaloosa. If it's Christmas Eve and you're Jewish, you're probably going out to see a movie and get some Chinese food.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
pretty much. So that's a segue.
Kind of a different point of view than what Adam was talking about in terms of Christmas. Like, Jews have a lot of holidays. We have, what, Adam, 15, 12 holidays throughout the year?
Mm-hmm. Some people celebrate more, some people celebrate less. There's minor holidays, major. I can't count all of them.
There's a lot of them. So the notion of looking for another holiday to celebrate, like, we're good. And for most people, like, we got a lot of holidays, right? Mm-hmm. So I can understand it if I was like in a faith like Christianity, you have Easter and you have Christmas. Now there might be some smaller minor holidays, but those two holidays, you've got to put everything on those, two holidays.
Right.
In the Jewish community, we spread it out a little bit more.
Okay.
So I think what you'd see, there are Jewish families who put up a Christmas tree. I have members of my own family who have put up Christmas trees, who still put up Christmas trees. And then they'll do the Hanukkah menorah and they'll do the presents, because what's happened is with the commercialization of Christmas in America has become, for a lot of people, it's you go to mass and you go to church and you come home and you have a meal with your family, right? There's the traditional Christmas. But for a lot of people, putting up the lights, putting up a tree, putting up the stockings, dressing up like Santa Claus, singing carols maybe, they view these things as American traditions. And a lot of Jewish people came to this country as immigrants. So for them and that generation, they saw no problem and no harm in that. I would say Christmas trees in Jewish homes probably was a lot bigger 50 years ago than it is today.
Okay. Is that because of more of a teaching or understanding of the Jewish culture, or what do you think is attributing to that?
I have an opinion on that, actually. I think there's been a revival within, I would say, like Jewish pride, if you will. A lot of people, when they came to America, there was a huge influx from, say, 1880 to 1920, a little bit before. A lot of them came to America and wanted nothing to do with their Jewish identity because they were persecuted and so forth. So they wanted to be American. A lot of my my great grandparents and so forth, when they came, they kind of left Judaism behind, but it wasn't until like they had kids and their kids were older, like my grandparents, they kind of find it again a little bit, taught their kids who taught my kids. So kind of was lost for a while, but people are becoming more proud of it again, and becoming more proud to like identify in that way.
Yeah.
It's just really nice to see.
Cool. So I don't know if we exhausted all we could talk about with regards to Hanukkah, but let me ask you about Hillel and what you are doing as an association here at UCF.
Well, before we go into that, just one more point on Hanukkah, if I may, Dr. Butler.
Sure.
You had talked before about Jews and Christmas trees. One of the reasons why there's a Hanukkah holiday is not just the miracle of the lights, it's what the Maccabees were fighting against. The Greeks, if you will, were occupying the land of Israel. Okay. And they went into the temple and defiled it, and there were prostitutes and there were sacrifices of pigs, all these things that were going to be very difficult for the Jews, but it was forced on them. Mm-hmm. And there were many Jews at the time that were engaged in Hellenistic culture, and what we would call them as assimilated. But imagine, if you will, take out the word Hellenistic and say America, because in the day, 2,000 years ago, 2,200 years ago, actually, before the Romans came to Israel, the Greeks were there. And when the Greeks occupied Israel, they were the America of the day. Like they were the dominant culture. Their music, their art, their plays, their books, everything that was Greek was considered top notch, kind of like America during our lifetime. And there were many, many Jews who embraced those things. In fact, there's evidence of Jews who went through self-reverse circumcisions in order to gain entry into these Greek bathhouses, because it was considered, that was the best place to go networking. And, that's a dedication to business that eludes me, but because that's a special kind of commitment. But we know
special kind of commitment, sure.
Right?
Sure.
That's a special kind of commitment, but we know archaeologically that happened. So if you will, the mere notion of engaging in other faiths or other cultures and to bring it into your own is the antithesis of the Hanukkah tradition. What Hanukkah almost compels us to do is to look inside our own tradition and say, what is unique that we have? What is our own message? Right. Not to figure out ways to bring in others, because that's kind of why the whole Hanukkah story happened, is that we were being forced to assimilate. And if you want to sum up Hanukkah, it's really a holiday that fights against assimilation.
Well, thank you.
So just to throw that one out there.
Well, that's important to know. I mean, that's helpful to know as well.
Right.
So when you think about it in terms of your family and what you have provided to your family, has it really kind of resonated with them as something to celebrate, or is it really, let's put it this way, in your mind, is it, because you say it's not one of the top holidays or one of the things that you celebrate, do you find it more of a nuisance, the way that people see it, or is it really something that you value and you still hold highly, even though it's not one of the highest holidays that you kind of pay homage to, I guess?
Sure. Adam, you want to take first bite?
Yeah, sure. There's like two sides to this question, I feel like, because I can see like there's both ends of the spectrum. I think that Hanukkah is great that people know Judaism exists, because I think it's really one of the only holidays that people who aren't Jewish like know it's kind of happening. Again, also it being 8 days kind of helps for that, but right. Other holidays that are extremely important within the religion go kind of unnoticed, whether it's, people feel it's a nuisance, for example, to pray or do whatever it is because they have school going on and everything like that. Fortunately, this one is not a religious holiday. There's a few things you do here and there, but you're not, in services the entire day doing anything. It's not a holiday in that sense. But it is nice that it's there for people to kind of help celebrate in. And there's actually a fun fact that I saw in terms of, Judaism, again, is we call it an ethno-religion, right? It's a group of people that also became a religion. So it's a people and a religion. Mm-hmm. More people in Israel eat sufganiyot, which is a jelly-filled donut, which is a traditional thing to eat during Hanukkah. More people in Israel eat sufganiyot than fast during Yom Kippur. So it goes to show that while it's not, say, important in a religious context, it's important to kind of have that identity, especially with a lot of people just not being religious and maybe not celebrating other holidays. If this is a holiday you want to celebrate and it's a joyous time and you feel connected to your Judaism in that way, I think it's important to kind of know that as well.
Okay, excellent.
And with my kids, I would say that they've taken on the holiday, but my kids, like your kids, they sit at their father's table and their mother's table and they hear the stories they hear and they draw their own conclusions. So I would say if you ask my kids, they would say that Hanukkah is important to them, but not maybe in the way that it was to me, because I experienced it largely growing up as an American. They have the American culture, but they now have it infused, if you will, with Israeli culture. And as an Israeli, you look at Hanukkah differently. As Adam was saying, they have these sufganiyot, which used to be a jelly donut. Of course, Israel's now taken that on steroids, and they make these things that are filled with like Bavarian cream, and they put candy bars on top, and then have dripping chocolate on it. It's like each one makes up like two Big Macs look like diet food by comparison. I mean, they're amazing, they're delicious, but it's and then all the things that are fried in olive oil, right? You can fry a lot of things in olive oil, right? You don't have to go to Missouri to find that out. So you can enjoy Hanukkah as a cultural holiday, as a culinary festival. And the wonderful thing about when you're in Israel, of course, is that it's a national holiday. So everybody's doing it. Everyone, it's not a question of who am I approaching. Pretty much everybody is. When you say Happy Hanukkah, you can get away with it. And it's a holiday where you can celebrate not only that tradition of the miracle of the lights, but I think in the world that we're living in today, you can celebrate it as a watchword to what happens when people go too far. Because when we talk about the miracle of Hanukkah, we stop the story there, but in reality, and the Catholics actually have this included in their canon. It's interestingly, it's included, the Book of Maccabees is included in the Catholic canon. It's not included in the Jewish one.
Okay.
Jews decided not to include it. The Catholics did include it. But what we learned is that the Maccabees, basically, after they got back the temple, they turned their war and it became a fratricide. It was one of the greatest fratricides in Jewish history, where Jews who basically got the power said, okay, now you need to be Jewish like I am. And the Hellenists were saying, I'm quite comfortable being a cultural Jew. And they're like, yeah, that's not option A or B, right? It's live or do it like us or not live. And so that's not a proud moment in Jewish history. And so that's something that as you're lighting the lights and you're eating the candy and you're talking about the stories, it's also in our minds, like, celebrate our traditions, but let us not be so rigid that we allow something like that to happen to us again.
Right.
We're all trying to do something to honor the image of an entity or a being that is beyond our comprehension. Then surely that being can rise above the politics that we as humans tend to overlay things. And so I think the opportunity for Hanukkah is to get through that and to get to the meaning of it, and not to observe what's happened politically, to be aware of the world that we're living in, to draw our lessons, and what is our responsibility for those of us who are living, for those who are in lesser situations, but to not let us become the thing that we're fighting against, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for bringing us back to that, because I think it was important for us to kind of be able to kind of know that information and differentiate some of those points. Adam, one of the things that I noticed when you say Hanukkah, you have a particular pronunciation of the word. I'm wondering if it's on purpose or if it's say it again.
So Hanukkah in written Hebrew, the first letter is chet, which is a letter that is not necessarily able to be, you can't easily say it if you did not grow up speaking the language or learning the language. It's a very guttural sound. So a lot of times in America, people will have, there's two options really to replace it with CH. Obviously in English, that's a ch sound, but it's the closest you can get to kind of thinking of like that kind of guttural sound, or just specifically putting an H. So there's a lot of words in Hebrew that we say, written in English, that will just kind of get rid of the ch sound and make it a h sound. So it's kind of just, that's like an assimilation thing, but it's also, you think of language as a whole, and if you didn't grow up speaking a certain language, it's hard to make certain sounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good call, though. Good call. Good catch. I'm using the American when I say Hanukkah. I'm speaking like an American, but he's speaking it correctly.
He is. I knew he was, and I knew that I wasn't going to make an attempt to say it in the way that he does, but I did pick up
Clear
on
your
that.
throat when you have a cold. It's the
Yes.
same sound.
There you go. It can clear up a couple of things, huh?
Yeah.
And so Hillel, let's go to Hillel and just kind of what your services are and what you provide to the university.
So I'm going to give a little bit of a background of Jewish life at UCF, and then I'm going to let Adam talk about Hillel.
Okay.
So quick, fast fact, UCF has the third largest Jewish population on a college campus in the United States. It's big. So we have just about 6,000 Jewish undergrads at UCF. That ties us with NYU. Number 2 is Rutgers, and number 1 is University of Florida. The difference between University of Florida and UCF is less than 500 students. And over the last 7 years, the numbers are starting to do this.
Yes.
We actually project out in the next 5 to 7 years, UCF could be the largest Jewish population on a college campus in the United States.
Nice.
So the Jewish life on campus has changed dramatically, I would say, in the last 7 years. We're about 92% of the Jewish population on campus comes from the state of Florida, largely from 3 counties in South Florida. We've got students who pass for we call them light-skinned or white passing. There are some that are Black. There are some that are Asian. There's quite a few that are Latinx. There's quite a large number that are LGBTQ. We really cross all different groupings, as Adam was talking about. We don't fit into one category because we include them all. And
Right.
you see all of those groups represented at UCF. Adam, you want to talk about Hillel?
So let me ask you a quick question, though, Adam, about Aaron, with regards to that, because there is this certain stereotype of who a Jewish person is or what a Jewish person looks like. You talk about the Jewish mom, right? And just those attributes that they say along those lines. And so you bring up a really good point that people need to recognize that you should not just stereotype someone. I mean, that's how people really do it, right? They think about it and say, well, you seem to have a Jewish nose, or you have a Jewish physique, or something along those lines.
Where are your horns? I've heard that one, yeah.
Say that one more time.
Where are your horns? I've heard that one too. You're Jewish, so you must have horns. So where are your horns? How come I can't see your horns? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't think I knew that one before. So it's very interesting. So it's really important for people to recognize that you have to get to know people and understand people and stop the stereotyping of what a person may or may not look like when you're trying to understand the Jewish faith or the Jewish I guess experience, so to speak. And I'm not saying it correctly, I know.
You're doing it perfect. So it's interesting. Not many people would look at Drake or Sammy Davis Jr. and say, you look Jewish.
Right.
And yet, both of them are Jewish, right? So the challenge, and that's part of the challenge, if you will, of being a ethnic and cultural group rather than a religious one. In fact, UCF has the distinction, certainly in the state of Florida, but I believe nationally, as being the only Hillel that's registered as a non-religious 501c3. We specifically chose our identification, like with Sunbiz, to be seen in the same category as a YMCA rather than a church or a mosque or a synagogue. And the reasoning is the majority of the students that we serve, they're looking for an ethnic and cultural experience, not necessarily a religious one.
Okay, makes sense.
So we cater to a lot of stuff on Israel. Israel's really big because, Israel's a Jewish homeland, Hebrew language, it's the language, right? Then we've got history. Doesn't matter whether you're from Peru or you're from South Africa or you're from Tulsa. There are certain traditions that permeate all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
We have the combined culture, and then the last one we have is a combined faith. So all 5 of these aspects make up peoplehood, and Hillel in general will focus or at least offer opportunities on each of those 5 veins.
Nice, I appreciate
Adam?
that.
Yeah. So, as a whole, right, what we're trying to do is, like any organization wants, is for their students to have a fantastic experience, make connections, grow the leaders of tomorrow. And while we are a Jewish organization, right, the idea of being Jewish isn't necessarily or inherently a religious one. There's amazing parts of the religion. We have what's Shabbat dinner every week. So Shabbat is the Sabbath. every Friday night we have Shabbat dinner, and we've fortunately this past semester been able to do it in a tent outside, socially distant, which has been fantastic.
Oh, that's good.
And there's religious components, but everything that you do within Judaism, you know, pertains to your life and how to be a better person. The way I personally like look at the religion is I need to be able to, I guess, touch something. It has to make sense or pertain to my life and how to make myself a better person.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of what we're doing for the students is how can we help them, you know, create connections. We have lots of, you know, for example, before this spring semester starts, we're going to do a little program for people who are starting in the spring who are Jewish, who want to make new connections the day before classes start. This way they come to school and they have some friends that they can come talk to and text with before classes. And the day, you know, classes start, we'll have programming, come to Hillel, we'll come to campus, we'll meet you for coffee and so forth. And we're really just there to support them, to help them grow, help them feel like they have a community. Because even though, as Aaron said, we're one of the biggest Jewish schools in the country, it's still such a small population compared to the grand scheme of things. And finding, you know, you think of any group of a student group on campus that you have, you can say a Latino group, right? They're in a group because they have a shared experience. It's the same way, right? They're not necessarily the same experience religiously, but they all have the same background in some capacity. Oh, we celebrate this one thing. Oh, you know this person, I know this person. Oh, you like this food. I ate this food growing up as well. My grandma made it for me. There's some sort of experience that they all have. And some are looking to learn more religiously, and that's awesome. So we'll have an opportunity for them. If they want to study, we have a rabbi and Rebbitzin, and which is a wife of a rabbi, they can teach them. We have other opportunities just for like leadership, growth, and experience, networking opportunities, travel opportunities. We've taken kids to Israel, where Spain, Italy,
Poland, England.
yeah, lots of places. Again, whether it's history, you know, broaden your horizons, meet new people that are like you but look completely different, or people who are completely not like you whatsoever. And that's kind of what we're all about, right? The religion as a whole is there, but Hillel is there to create experiences, and people who aren't Jewish are totally allowed to come to any of our programming. We've been getting non-Jewish students forever. Every Friday night, we have at least like 5 or 6 that come on a weekly basis, and they enjoy it, right? There's a component that might be saying a few prayers in Hebrew, but that's for 10 seconds. And then the rest is just come, eat, hang out, and have a fantastic time. Because
that's a really good point that you're making. And so what are some of the highlights over the course of the year that anyone at UCF should be really maybe thinking about embarking upon so that they can enjoy the experience as well? What are some of the things that you would want to encourage people to partake in?
Sure. Well, I'll continue on with our Friday night dinners. So this happens, you know, before COVID, generally inside our building with hundreds of people. Now it's a little bit less and socially distant, but it's basically a time to come to Hillel. It's in our parking lot, hang out with your friends, catch up with people, meet new people, and eat food. That's literally all it is. There's, again, a few components of it. And what's really cool, the idea of Shabbat, it's like fun little anecdote, is very similar. And this is kind of what I tell a lot of students, and how to, again, grasp something, make like a religious thing feel attainable. The idea of Shabbat is very similar to a date, where you're trying to get closer with someone, right? If you think about a date, you're going to get, maybe you're going to shower, get dressed up. You're going to go to the restaurant, light some candles, have wine and bread. And again, get closer with the person you're trying to talk to. The way Shabbat works, whether at Hillel or at someone's house or whatever, you usually will get dressed up. You come, sit down, and we light candles. That's the first thing you're supposed to do to commemorate the start of the Sabbath. You do a prayer over wine or grape juice, and then you do a prayer over bread. And again, it's a very similar thing. And the idea or essence of Shabbat is to just get closer with the people you're around. And we find that that's a great time for our students just to kind of relax. It's the end of the school week. Come, hang out with your friends, meet new people. And a lot of times we'll see students come, whether they're Jewish or not, whether they knew each other or not, come and then leave with new friends. Nice. And I encourage anyone who is watching this, come experience this, because it's a fantastic time, and we don't discriminate. Anyone can come.
So is it a potluck, or who supplies all this great food if you get 100 people?
We provide the food. We get it catered in. It's kosher food, but obviously, as Aaron mentioned before, lots of food is kosher and you don't even realize. And yeah, so especially during COVID, we have it individually packaged. It's free, so anyone can attend. You just sign up on our website. And yeah, again, we have that. On Wednesdays, we have something similar. It's completely a-religious though. It's called Hump Day Nosh, Hump Day being Wednesday, and Nosh is Yiddish for, eating food, snacking, and things like that. So we'll have like small fun foods on Wednesday nights. It's a similar idea. And then this coming semester, we have lots of outdoor ideas, virtual programming that we'll kind of just have it about. We don't necessarily have everything planned just yet. Obviously this year just being a little bit different, but those are two of our weekly events that happen no matter what's going on.
Excellent.
Also, just to clarify one point there, when Adam was using the word free relating to food, he was using the language that he uses with students. And it's accurate to say that it is free to the students. But as the CEO, I can tell you, we raise a lot of money to make sure that the students can have that free experience. You and I both know there's no such thing as free.
Free for one, but not free for all, right?
Right. We do a lot of fundraising for that. But one of the biggest things that we have is a trip to Israel called UCF Perspectives. It's an annual trip that we do. Our last trip, unfortunately, was before COVID, but it was an amazing trip. The majority of the people on the trip, I think 80% of the trip has to be non-Jews by design. So, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist, doesn't really matter, as long as you're a leader on campus. And we take these students, and they're all top leaders. Like they could be the head of the Democrats or the Republicans or Black Student Union, or it doesn't really matter. But we take these students on a 10-day trip where they go to Israel. They go to what we call Judea and Samaria, which is the heartland of Israel. It's also called the West Bank. It's a politically contentious area. They have the opportunity to meet with Israelis. They have the opportunity to meet with Palestinians. They even met with the Deputy Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority. They met with Palestinian college students. And the goal of the trip is truly to send them back to UCF understanding the power of a perspective, not just people's narratives, but the power of perspective. And to understand the perspective really has a huge amount to say in how we understand things. So the goal of the trip is not to, take these kids and get them to all come back to campus and say, I love Israel and I saw this Disney World version of Israel. We want to show them Israel in its complexities. So it's an amazing experience. They're 12, 13, 14-hour days. They're on the bus probably by 7:30, 8:30 in the morning, and they don't get back to the hotel before 10 o'clock at night. Wow. And it's a free trip. I was going to say they get their money's worth. But the experiences they have, we had the president of student government, Kyler, did a mass baptism except for the Jewish people. We were holding the video cameras for everyone, but everybody else had a mass baptism in the Jordan River. And it was one of the highlights of the trip, totally unexpected. But for these students, it was an incredible experience of a lifetime to be standing in the place where Jesus had his baptism and to be there, 2,000 years later. Yes. So a lot of what Hillel does is to try and educate people, not about tolerance, because I'm not a big fan of the word tolerance. I just think it's a very low bar. If I tolerate someone, that who wants to tolerate?
It's a differential, right? I'm tolerating you. I'm here, and you're here, right?
Exactly. We're big into acceptance. We want to learn how to accept different narratives, and how do we find a place where even though we might disagree with somebody,
right?
How do we get through it? And one of the lessons we had with a student who came in with, had his own prejudices, and he learned at the end of the trip. He says, I had my prejudices, but I learned on this trip that once I know somebody's name, it's a lot harder to be prejudiced.
Isn't it?
That is shorthand for once I hear their story and I learn about where they're from. That experience, and then bringing it back to UCF, particularly in the wake of the George Floyd murder, we're living in a time where our students, they're not necessarily getting that in the classroom.
Yes.
This is something that Hillel really wants to tackle. How do we teach people to have respect for one another?
So here's an important question. Why just students? How come faculty and staff and administrators are not a part of this trip?
That's a great question. I would love to be able to answer that as soon as I get more budget. But yes, we should absolutely do that.
Because I asked that question, when you get more budget,
I know who's first in line.
This is my livelihood. This is what I do, right? I need to know about all cultures. And so
I would be happy to sit down with you. And by the way, you're not wrong. There are several universities that have done that. I did have a talk with President Hitt about 4 years ago about doing something similar. He was all in favor, and then of course he retired. But yes, I think it'd be a marvelous opportunity to get.
I think you should revisit that idea. I really think you should revisit that idea.
I'm happy to meet with you in January, and let's make the first one. I'll just need you to be my leader if that's okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you, the leader. That's so funny. All right, so we're coming up on the end of our time. I mean, this went by more quickly than I thought it would, in terms of hearing all the stories and getting to talk a little bit more about other things other than Hanukkah. Any last minute words of wisdom from you all, in terms of your experiences here at UCF, things that we should know? I got a chance to come and visit and walk through the facility and see what you all are doing there. What does the UCF community need to know who have not taken the opportunity to kind of gravitate towards the Hillel experience?
Adam, you want to go first? I'll do cleanup.
Sure. So I think a lot of times people are, for whatever reason, scared to get involved. You know, say in the future, right, when our building is open again, walking through those doors can be intimidating, or coming to an event by yourself now can be intimidating. It's in college, it's a time of your life to, get out of the box, try new things out. And I encourage students this all the time. We have a student who's currently a junior, and when her freshman year was her second semester, she wouldn't go to anything without a friend. She finally decided to try it without a friend one time, never looked back. As one of our top student leaders, it really kind of just taking that one leap of faith, not even just Hillel, any organization on campus, try something new. Yeah. But with us, we don't bite. I get coffee with students all the time. We pay for it. The people who work at Starbucks probably know me by now. And it's just a great, really, we want you guys to feel comfortable at UCF, feel like you have a community, feel like you have someone to support you. And we're there to support you really in any which way, whether it's with school, whether it's personally, we can, help you with certain things or tell you to talk to certain people. You want to literally, I don't know, I have students who are literally like, oh, play this video game with me. I'll literally do anything, right? We're there just to have someone to talk to in any capacity possible and help you build those experiences. And then for the students who, again, are scared, just again, take that leap of faith and try it out, because you don't know what you're missing until you try it.
And I agree with you. The most important part of getting to know people and understanding it, and Aaron, you said it so correctly with, once you know someone's name, once you get to understand someone and be in their circle, maybe walk in their shoes a little bit, it's hard to have those prejudices and to hold on to them with any real tangibility, I guess, or the ability to kind of not be able to go back to where you were in the way that you see the world. Anything about Hillel that you want to share and talk about? Yeah,
just to say that, the opportunities, as Adam said, for Hillel, they're not just for the Jewish kids. And I would say beyond that, especially for those kids who are not Jewish, if you've got a project that you're working on campus that has to do with social justice, changing the world, making it a better place, a more just place, a more inclusive place, come talk to Hillel. We've got students. Adam is running a group of how many people in Hulk right now?
37.
It's 37 UCF students who are each working on leadership projects at UCF that are going to be open to all students on campus, but are designed to help improve the quality of the campus life at UCF. We're an organization that's open to everyone. So if you've got questions and you're curious, or you're just, hungry on a Friday night, come see us.
Come see us. Well, I think that's the key thing, right? And I know that I've been over there and I haven't been back, so I've been a bad friend with regards to that. But we talked, and we have some things that we're working on that we're still fleshing through and get done. But the openness and the actual inviting in and making people feel part of that they belong is definitely something that I felt coming in. And I know that that's something that is there that people can have. And it's just taking that leap of faith, just like you said, Adam, and just like letting down your guard and allowing yourself to be, right? And
it happens in the most unusual of spaces, Dr. Butler. We took a student on this UCF Perspectives trip to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the trip, we were having a summary, and the student started to share some tears. And we're like, what's going on here? And he said, you know, my church is a small church in South Carolina that was attacked, as you remember the story, and 12 members of the congregation were murdered by a white supremacist.
Right.
But when he tries to communicate that story here in the States, most people don't understand that. They don't understand what it's like to be on the victim of terrorism, to not even be seen, I mean, to have your pain and to not be seen, right? As I can only even imagine, something that I think many Black Americans are going through, have been going through, but since George Floyd, it's kind of like it's more raw, it's on the surface.
Excellent.
Him being in Israel was the first time he met other people who have daily had to live with terrorism and have had to come to it. And it was like he found his first space that he was able to kind of be seen as someone who was a victim of terrorism. Long story short, fast forward, he's now working with UCF to create a rock garden called Chai, which is the Hebrew word for 18. It also means life. And his goal is to create a rock garden that'll encourage UCF students to accept others, to just be accepting of others and to be inclusive of others.
Powerful.
That's also part of what we do. It doesn't matter what your color, your religion, your sexual orientation. Yeah. Hillel is a concept. It's a philosophy of inclusiveness, and we're going to be who we are, and we welcome others who want to come see it, and we want to help other people on their journeys as well.
Beautiful. That's a great way to end it. And so we got to come look for that rock garden. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of today's podcast. It was definitely fun to talk with you all. The time just flew, and I appreciate you all so much for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this. Just for our viewers, we have on this coming Friday at 1 o'clock, we're going to be working and talking with Asian students here at UCF and talking about what life has been like for them, especially during the pandemic and with all the things that have been going on in the world. So be sure to tune in on Friday to talk with our Asian students. I want to give thanks to our UCF Foundation Office for being partners in our ability to put forth this podcast. And I want to thank Aaron and Adam for just being your truthful, honest selves. And I'm looking forward to it. And Adam, we'll have to talk off screen about how I can kind of add that Hanukkah to my verbiage. All right.
Make it happen.
You guys, you take care.
Take care, Dr. Butler. Thank you.
Thank you.